Good day, everyone, and welcome to Local Talks, where we dive into everything from current events to the wonders of nature. I'm your host, AC, and today we're ready to explore and discuss what matters most. Let's jump right in! Naman! Rivers are vital to communities as they provide fresh water for drinking, agriculture, and industry. They support local ecosystem, enhance biodiversity, and create recreational opportunities. Economically, rivers enable transportation and trade while fostering tourism. Culturally, they often hold spiritual or historical significance. By maintaining a healthy river system, communities can ensure sustainable livelihoods and environmental resilience. Good day again, everyone. Welcome to Local Talks. This is AC, and today we will be talking about rivers. And I have invited a guest, a river catchment scientist who's been working with rivers for years now. And let's all welcome Mr. Jonathan Stevens. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you, Alan. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking. Or I greet our listeners and our viewers. Sorry.
Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Um, this episode, we're going to be talking about rivers. So we're going to be talking about how you can identify a healthy-looking river, the different types of river, and how you can get involved in local community action groups to help improve your river and really you'd start to think about your local river as a dynamic ecosystem, which everyone can be involved with and contribute to the health of. Um, and so, yeah, let's start and hopefully we can inspire a few people.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for joining us today. We are all excited in all the information that you will be sharing with us about the
Mm,
rivers. And let's jump right in.
mm,
So when you were here in the Philippines, I've
mm,
noticed that when we went to Iloilo, or sorry, in
mm,
Dos Palmas, you were always in the water. So that's the time I
mm.
thought you are an aquatic person. So now you're working with
Yeah,
rivers. So what
yeah.
sparked your interest in rivers?
Well, unfortunately, around the coast of England, we don't have shallow tropical seas, and you know, pristine coral reefs. Whilst we do have cold reef systems. Um, Really, it's the more marine style of ecosystems that I love when it comes to um, the pelagic environment, the sea environment. But rivers, really, in particularly in southeast England where we live, um, we have a lot of chalk streams, and which they're pristine habitat. They're really rare. We have the largest number of chalk streams in the world are here in southeast England, and going on holidays with my family when I was younger, and going into rivers and fishing and going on day trips out to rivers or just going to the coast and looking in rock pools and seeing the variety of life that you would not normally see under the surface of the water. Just from an early age, just absolutely fascinated with it. And we had a big pond in the back garden, and it was always amazing to see. Well, for a start, you put your head under the water in the bath and you can't breathe. So that alien world that then comes to life the more and more you learn about it. And it was fascinating when I was a kid. And I think that's the key point of getting people involved when they're young, getting them inspired and excited about things, and it all took off from there, really.
Yeah, you know what? We do have the same experience when we were young. When we were kids,
Mm,
our parents would bring up upstream, uh, in upstream for a picnic in the riverbanks, and
mm,
it was a refreshing experience. Clear
yeah,
water, clean environment, the breeze. You can
yeah,
smell nature on it.
mm,
Birds chirping, flying on top of you. It was an amazing experience. And I
yeah.
think that those memories would stay for me forever. And which
Yeah.
leads me to my next question. Do you
Mm.
believe that rivers are essential to ecology?
Um, well, they're one of the big drivers of different ecosystems and contribute massively to the ecology of all the systems and catchments they run through. Certainly,
Mm-hmm.
they provide ecosystem services. They regulate the environment. They provide drinking water. They provide modes of transport. Um, and the variety of life that can live in and around a river is just absolutely vast. We've got so many different types of rivers, um, from perennial rivers that run all year, and then you've got seasonal intermittent rivers, which are seasonally dry, perhaps in the summer months,
Mm-hmm.
braided rivers, which are multiple interwoven channels of like loosely consolidated material, like alluvium, which would so the river can be scoured out and move through time, really dynamic system. Um, and all of these systems will have sort of their freshwater invertebrates. They will have fish. They will have different plant species, bird species which use the river. Um, and they're the way I like to think about rivers is they're almost like the arteries of our continents. They're transporting that water into the heart of our continents and our countries and transporting fresh water all around. So it's really vital that we protect them, um, from an ecological value, from a value of food source, of water, of transport, of heritage. There's so much about rivers to admire and to study and to love, that and the ecology of rivers is a fundamental part as well. Yeah. So
Uh,
yes, I do think they're fundamental to ecology, specifically around the environments that they flow through.
yeah. I think as well that it helps transport seeds and that would grow in the
Yeah,
forest.
exactly. I mean, if you think about places like the Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
when you've got fish that they might eat berries that are falling off of riparian plants,
Mm-hmm.
and when they consume the berries, not only are they getting their food source, but then they're also transporting the seeds up or downstream, and depositing those seeds, which far expands the reach of those seeds. So the forest can actually spread, and then the biodiversity of the forest can spread. So, yeah, really interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. And which leads me to my next question. You've mentioned about the types of rivers earlier, the
Hmm.
perennial, the intermittent. What are the other types aside from those?
Well, if you think, think about all different rivers and all different catchments. So you've got
Mm-hmm.
highland, lowland rivers, and they all react differently to the environment. Um, there will be rivers associated with glaciers, particularly sort of mountain rivers that are fed by
Mm-hmm.
glaciers that might be characterized by really, really clean water in the upreaches, and as they work down through the reach of the catchment, they might pick up minerals or metals, or depending on the type of environment and what's been done to that environment. Um, so again, as I said earlier, the perennial rivers, they're permanent rivers. They're there all year. They might be fed by aquifers or groundwater or
Mhm.
rain or again glaciers. Your seasonal rivers might be fed by purely just runoff. That in the summer season, when there's no rains, there's no river, and
Mhm.
then as soon as the rains returned, hence we've got the rivers back. They're very common to see in arid countries like South Africa and Australia and places that seasonally dry out. Um, those braided river systems where, if you look at Microsoft packages on your desktop, I'm sure there's a screensaver of a braided river that looks like someone has got braided hair,
Mhm.
interwoven streams of different branches of rivers, and they will scour out the material on the bottom, and they will constantly be moving. And I'm sure if you had sort of flew a plane over a braided river system and took a picture on the 1st of January every year, no picture would ever be the same because the river's too dynamic and is constantly moving. Um,
Yeah.
one of the rivers that I mentioned previously was the chalk stream, which is um, in southeast England particularly predominant, and
Mhm.
they're usually formed over not clay, chalk or limestone geology, and therefore the water is really filtered as it comes up. Um, and it's common to see things like trout in these rivers, and we get nice long, the typical sort of Lord of the Rings style river in the Shire that you would
Yeah.
expect is what chalk streams are, but they're coming under a lot of pressures during this time, and it's vital that we protect those rivers because
Mhm.
there are very few of them in the world. Um, but yeah, rivers are a product of their environment, how the land drains, um, how the geography is shaped. Is it
Uh-huh.
mountainous? Is there a lot of runoff? Is there a lot of rain? Um, and rivers can are so diverse that they can take almost any shape and any form.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember our river here in Kamiling was actually a permanent river. You can see
Mm,
uh, water flowing from it. But
mm,
today it's not. We can't. We rarely see water in our river
yeah,
anymore, especially during summer. Most probably
yeah,
because of uh, too much dredging and
mm,
and uh, uh, the development. Uh,
yeah,
I think that's the reason. And with that said, since we dredge a lot, uh, the biodiversity on that, would that be affected?
mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would. I mean, if you look at the Cameling River in particular, and you look at the area around the town of Cameling, there's a lot of hard engineering structures built in and around the river to contain it. And when I say hard engineering structures, I'm talking about concrete banks on the rivers, and other structures that are built to either contain or funnel water out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really to protect the town because the town is subject to flooding every so often.
Correct.
And to minimize that, the banks have been covered in concrete, and the structures have been built in order to turn the river into a funnel. And that is so when large volumes of water do come down the river, get it out of town as quick as possible. The problem with that is that when you get very large volumes of water and you're moving it very, very fast, you might be able to protect camelling and get it out of camelling very, very quickly. But then you would probably have to continue the hard engineering structures further downstream because you have the potential issue of compounding those issues further downstream.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been that every time camelling flooded, the by effect or the byproduct of that, the effect of that might have been that downstream didn't flood. However, by protecting camelling and funneling that water out, you might now find that not only does the town downstream flood, but it's way more severe flooding than what Cameling would have experienced because you've accelerated all of that water downstream towards them. Um, and you could end up with an ongoing cycle of having to hard engineer massive more and more and more parts of the river to try and just funnel that water out. And that's when you will see that seasonally your river will probably dry up because it's been turned from a natural river system into a drain, essentially. Um,
Correct.
and the biodiversity in that river it will probably become functionally dead. It's no longer connected to the floodplain. It's no longer connected to riparian plants, which are
Mm-hmm.
plants that grow up on the banks. The scouring out of the bottom of the river system is affecting all of the benthic communities along the bottom of the river, so vertebrates and bugs and whatever. You're removing a vast food source for fish, so the fish are probably going to disappear. Um, you're probably removing food source for birds as well, so you'll probably find that bird populations massively decline or move on to other areas of the river. And so the river going through Cameling is going to end up looking very industrial, and people are going to become less engaged with it, and they're going to withdraw from it and start disliking their river. That again, that poses a massive problem as well because it leads to a cycle of degradation of the river.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, it will just run away till the river's functionally dead.
Correct. Correct. Like you've said, the function of the river now is just like a drain. So
Yeah.
basically, the function should be balanced. So,
Yes.
but you can't do that anymore because it has already been uh, built with a dike, a concrete beside it,
Mm.
on both side of the river,
Mm.
to prevent erosion as well. So
Yeah.
and erosion is important for habitats of that river because of
Mm.
the soil nutrients, and for plants or
Cycling of
uh,
materials, the
yes,
river being able to naturally move through its environment. Essentially,
correct.
what you're doing is you're taking the dynamic river system that moves over time and you're saying
And
to the river, no, no, you're staying here. This is where you stay now. This is your route. You flow down here. Uh, uh, yeah, it's a hard one because especially where you're
yeah,
managing interaction between the river and human population, and if this river causes significant issues with that local population, then
actually
there's a
that's
there's a tend of they tend to favor hard engineering structures.
yeah, that's actually true because they need to prioritize people,
Mm. Yeah,
because and properties.
yeah,
That's a difficult decision to make for the local
yeah,
communities, but
yeah.
I hope that they could actually continue developing the whole system in order for everything or all inhabitants of that
Hmm.
river would benefit from it. So
Yeah.
I really
Mm.
hope so that they will find balance on
Mm.
nature and development. Now
Yeah.
let's move on to identifying how a healthy river.
That's a good question, and I think really you if you have a good think about what do you want to see when you go to a river, and you'll be close, you'll be along the right lines because nobody wants to go to their local river and see the banks covered in concrete. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
see shopping trolleys in the river.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they want
Is clean
is they want to go to
water.
a river, they want to see clean water, they want to see lots of plants and a whole variation of
Mm-hmm.
plants right up to the riverbank. They want to see different flow regimes. So they want to see part of the river where the water moves really slowly, and other parts of the river where the river might riffle up and down. And so that's a sign of different microenvironments on the bed of the
Mm-hmm.
river. You've
Mm-hmm.
got sort of different variations of flow. You want to see fish, you want to see invertebrates, you want to see butterflies along the river's edge, you want to see birds. Ideally, as well, you want to see perhaps families or children or whatever interacting with the river, being in the river.
That's very
Um,
scenic.
you want the smell to be sort of natural, smell plants. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
see things like algae. You definitely don't want to see algae and scum growing on the river. Nice, clean, cool, bubbling, gurgling water. Lots of plants, lots of bugs, lots of animal life, and all of those you should be able to sense also by closing your eyes, just listening to the sound of the river.
Mm-hmm.
Though that's what you want to see. But what you don't want to see is a river confined, that's boxed up by concrete, that the water's disappeared, that there's no bugs, there's no plants, there's no birds. The sound of the river is just zero. You don't want to be able to go to the river and close your eyes and just be able to hear cars, or just be able to hear work equipment in the background, beep beep beep.
Yeah.
The river, you want it as natural as possible. And so I think most people would be able to identify what they would like to see from a river. I mean, we see on these documentaries on TV from all over the world, these pristine environments
Mm-hmm.
that David Attenborough and others go to show us this pristine environments. And everyone thinks, oh, I would love to go there. Well, you can, if you look after your own river. And but working together, we can enhance those environments, or we can protect those environments. But so yeah, really, it's caring for your environment, and really think about what should be there. What should be there? What do you want to see?
Yeah. Birds chirping, clear water, clean environment. Now,
Yeah,
uh, let me.
that's what you saw when you was a kid. When
Mm-hmm.
you were a kid and with your family, you went to the river.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you saw. So
Correct.
a lot of people have those memories of as well of my river used to look like this. So the next question is, how do I get my river looking
The
to
same
how
way.
it used to look when I was a kid?
Yeah.
Ask yourself those questions.
Correct. Correct. That's how. That's actually the thing that we need to answer. Now, you've mentioned about seeing those particular aspects of healthy rivers. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've mentioned all of those. You have all
Mm.
those components. Clean visibly clear water, clean
Yeah.
environment. But how do you test the water if it's really healthy or not?
So water quality testing.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple ways you can do it. There's citizen science testing, where you can use small little handheld electronic checkers. There are small chemical checkers where you can use testing strips,
Mm-hmm.
dip them in the water, and then test them against the color on the side of the bottle, and that will tell you things like what the pH are, etc. Um, Water quality, like consultancies and rivers trusts and things like this. We also use water quality sondes,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big piece of equipment with sensors on it that we dip into the river, and it gives us live readings of what each chemical parameter is in that current location at that current time. We can also install those continuously. So you would install them on the riverbank in what's called a stilling well that would go into the river. So the sensor head sits permanently under the water. And every 15 minutes, it takes a reading and by satellite sends that data to you. So you've got a really clear image of what the river's doing. If there's any things like sewage spills, we pick those up in the data. Um, the dissolved oxygen, which is really good for looking at whether it's a healthy environment that could support fish communities or invertebrate communities. And so all the host of different chemical parameters that you could do and measure. But they're measurable to different degrees by a vast array of different people, from community volunteer groups right the way up to consultancies and trusts and government at all different levels. So it's all about picking the right tool for the right job, and who you are, and what your budget is.
Okay. Now, since we're talking about testing the water, if you have tested the water that is actually polluted, but you can
Mm,
see it's clear, uh,
mm.
is it possible that those inhabitants live in there? Do they adapt to that kind of environment
Uh,
if it's
it depends. Every living organism will be tolerant of a different level of pollution to a degree. And it's about knowing what that balance is, and tipping points.
mm-hmm,
So, for instance, sewage going into rivers. As it comes into a river, if it's a perennial river, it's all year, it's diluted, there's constant flow, there's enough water. Fish will survive to a certain degree, but if that water level starts dropping, the sewage becomes more concentrated, you might find that they start to die off. And so it's really about finding that really those points where species are going to start to die off. And freshwater invertebrate or river fly surveys are really important for this. So all of the freshwater invertebrates that you would expect to see in a healthy river can be measured against the river invertebrates that you currently have. And each one is susceptible or is tolerant, say, to a different level of pollution. So let's say that your river system was clean and you went out and you did your freshwater invertebrate surveys. You might see a whole host or different community of assemblages of freshwater invertebrates. You might have caddis fly, caseless caddis,
mm-hmm,
and cased caddis, um, all sorts of different beetles. But through time, if those populations start to shrink and freshwater shrimp, say gammarus, start to take over, then the gammarus populations are much more pollution tolerant. You know that your river is becoming more and more polluted through the change in that communities. So riverfly are really good because they're termed as bioindicators. They give us a really good indication of what water quality is and what's going on. So they're a vital component of doing water quality surveys, but they're also something that community action groups can do and build data catalogues of today I found X, Y, and Z, and tomorrow you're going to find X, Y, and Z, and 4 days ago you found X and Y only. Yeah, it's again, it's everything is a fine balance. I couldn't actually tell you that fish X in your
mm-hmm.
river will survive until phosphate hits this
Yeah,
level.
yeah.
You don't know unless you go out and test and look and
Correct,
yeah,
correct. Okay. So basically they could survive. They could survive in a certain level. But
yeah,
if
to a certain
it's
point.
to a certain point, but if it
Yeah,
uh if it's already uh very much polluted, well then They could
The-
actually,
and so many other factors come into it,
yeah.
like runoff. If there's lots of rain and you've got lots of runoff coming into the river, how
Mm-hmm.
clean is that water coming in? Does that dilute the pollution in the river? How high is the river? How much water is in there? There are so many things that govern this, but generally speaking, um, yeah, the more polluted a river, the less taxa you're going to see in that river.
Okay, so since we are talking about pollution, how can the community help in preventing pollution on our rivers?
So first thing is be curious and be interested. Go to your
Mm-hmm.
local river and go
Mm-hmm.
and look at it and think, why does my river look like this? And what did it used to look like? If you can remember a time when it used to look different, um, why has it changed? It's really about asking those questions. But if you want to get involved, firstly, I would try and find some sort of organization, whether it be a volunteer organization, local council or government, a rivers trust, that could provide you training that will enable you to work on the river, get into the river, and engage with it safely. The most important thing is when you're going to work on a river that you are safe. So you need to be able to identify when there are fast flows, when there is slightly deeper water, so that you don't put yourself in danger when you're going out to that river. Also, with pollution, if there's certain levels of pollution in that river, you don't want to get in there if it's going to make you sick. But where it is safe to do so, things like river cleans, don't let rubbish get into the river, uh, taking rubbish out of the river. Um, Things like water. Do you have appropriate drainage systems on your property? Are you capturing the water that washes off your gardens and off your roof? Is that washing nutrients into the river? Um, every time you flush your toilet, where does that go? Does it go into a main sewer, which then drains into the river? Can the local government or council be petitioned that actually we'd prefer a water treatment works to deal with all that sewage that doesn't drain into the river? Um, then things like doing freshwater invertebrate communities, like river action groups, go out and actually take. You could take river water samples and get those analysed in a lab. You could have a community action group that perhaps you even just go out and take a photograph
Mm-hmm.
at 10 points along the river every single day. And then through time, you build up a picture of the changes that are occurring on your river. Really good visual model. And those are really, really important. You might go out and do invertebrate surveys and just count the invertebrates that you find in a certain location of river. And you might do that every 3 months. But if you're doing that, it's important that if fish spawn in the river, that you don't go out and do those surveys during fish spawning season, because you're going to disturb those eggs on the river bottom trying to get invertebrates, and inadvertently you might kill the next fish population. So wetland plant community surveys, go out to the edge of your river, count up all the different species of plants. Is there anything that you can do to say, put raised beds along the edge of the river? Um, can you build up riparian buffer strips? So areas where the river is more natural and the soil bank goes down to the river. Getting out and engaging with your river. It may be that you just do plant surveys. You could do bird surveys. There's a whole host of things that you can do, but keep that data and keep building that data up so that pictures can be built through time. And that's really how you can engage with your river. And if you can raise funding, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be the setup of a web page to specifically raise funding, or you can go to the local council and say, is there funding for our community group to do river cleanups or to do invertebrate surveys, or can we buy a new community action group camera so that we can go out and photograph the river and build up that visual record of changes. There will be organisations out there, whether it be government, councils, trusts, whatever, that can support you. And it's really that aspect of working together with many different stakeholders that enable all this work to go forward
Mm-hmm.
and work. Because individually things are very, very hard. But I would say if you do own a camera, go and snap the river, take some pictures. And if you, even if you can only go once a month, take a picture once a month, and then in a year's time compare them. Have a look at what was going on in January and February, and look at the seasonal variation along the river and how it changes, and when the water level was high and when it was low, and because you're building up a really important historical data set, and which can be used going forward. So, and the more data you add to that, the more valuable it becomes. So, a whole host of things you could do, and you're limited by imagination, really.
Yeah. So basically, uh, the community could help by uh, learning your rivers,
Yeah,
cleaning it up by joining an organization, and monitor it by taking pictures. So
yeah,
that's it.
absolutely.
So basically, we have already covered almost everything: ecology, the contribution of rivers to ecology, and the
Yeah,
essential the essence of it through biodiversity, and how can we determine or identify a healthy river, and how could the
yeah,
community help on maintaining
mm,
the river to be healthy.
yeah.
That's it. I think we have covered everything, and thank you for all the information, John, about
Yeah,
rivers. And we really do appreciate you joining us.
yeah. Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, and that's it. And thank you again for watching and listening to Local Talks. This is AC, and always have courage and be kind because tomorrow's never promised. Have a wonderful day and ciao. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye bye.